Otherwise, I think we have another piece of important business related to our Patreons.
Yes.
To talk about.
We, as always, are probably several months behind on thanking our Patreons. So we decided to catch up. The last time I'm sure we thanked everybody was on 6/1. So
that's a long time ago.
4 months. We do it every quarter or so. We get around to thanking people.
Quarterly reports.
Yeah. So that's what we're doing here is our quarterly report. This would be the fall report, end of summer, as it gets a little chilly outside. So a huge thank you to the following folks. You guys, again, to our existing patrons, to our continuing patrons who start high and then have to lower their amount. I still love you. Those of you who start low and raise your amount, I love you a lot. But everybody out there who continues to support us, has ever supported us, thank you so much. You guys really do keep this podcast going. For sure. Any amount of support is very much making us feel warm and fuzzy inside. So thank you. So starting from 531. So we may have already thanked you, but I just want to make sure we get the overlap. Kenton Yeats. Thank you. Yates. We're bad with names. You know that. Joseph Whitehouse Seam? Bad with names. Well, here's one that's made up, or at least I hope this is made up. Vixen Fatale. Vixen Fatale. Ooh, I like that better. Kind of like femme fatale. That's where I think that's coming from. I'm liking it. It sounds sexy. Next up, we have CJ Calhoun. And then Roy. And then a name I recognize, Beth Weston. Hello. Thank you. And then a name I recognize, Sherbert Mango. Hello. Sherbs. And yet another name we both recognize, Bryant. Thanks so much. Yeah, thank you guys. Those were all WotCon folks that we originally met at WotCon, and then Bryant came to SpoilerCon. Yeah, Bryant came out to SpoilerCon after seeing him at WotCon. It was great. It was so lovely to see multiple faces in such a short, in my opinion, short span of time, over a couple months. Mm-hmm. Bertine Buchan? Yeah, I'm thinking it might be a Chan. Yeah. Bertine Buchan. Parrish Wright. Vilma George. Christy Keene, who I also recognize from Twitter. Hello. Unraveling, which I'm pretty sure that is who you think it is. Yes, that is Lauren, definitely. Unraveling the pattern. Thank you so much for your support. Really do appreciate that. Ashley Board. Holger Cruz. And the final line is name, email, Twitter, Discord. That explains my intonation there. I'm just like, there's another name there, but nope, that's the headers. Yep. Holger Cruz. Thank you so much. And with that, we'll finish out the patrons. Again, thank you guys so much for joining. I love you guys. Yeah, you can buy our love for the low, low price of being our Patreon supporter at all, ever. We will love you eternally. Thank you.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Oh, so for the audio only audience, you should know that Seth is apparently wearing a glitter shirt thanks to the nature of the green screen yes, behind him. He's wearing plaid, so there's a grid of spots that keep shimmering in and out of existence. Yeah, it's like a blue, green, white. It literally looks like glitter. White. Yeah, that's because I've got a white behind me, so it looks like I've got a white map. Mm-hmm. So let's talk. Let's dig into this episode first by talking a little bit about something vaguely related, but that is there's a new map out from Michael Livingston. He's writing The Origins of the Wheel of Time, and he's in a sneak peek. They gave us basically the more accurate map of the Wheel of Time based on Robert Jordan's feedback on the map as given in the Big White Book and other places. He was like, that's wrong, and gave them a bunch of notes, and the update exists, and Seth is currently showing it to the live audience who can see the video. It's basically Shanshan is a lot bigger and spreads out farther to the east. Randland, the main continent, is a lot smaller. The land of madmen is slightly differently positioned. That's the basic differences. And that is based on Robert Jordan being irate, from what I read.
And the proportions just make a lot more sense if you look at this as a globe, as opposed to the way they're just sort of squished into a corner in the Big White Book art. It's a better representation of what the land should look like, but it also just shows you how freaking massive Shanshan is. Like, it is just, 10, 15, 20 times the size of the Westlands.
Entire, like the Westlands,
right.
Including Shara.
Right.
Like a continent we don't deal with. It's ridiculous. It's very much like when you realize that the Mercator projection has been radically overemphasizing Europe. Mm-hmm. It's that kind of a shift in your brain, seeing this new map. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there will be a side-by-side comparison in the new book, but I freaking hope so. And definitely that, like, more or less 2 seconds after the first nerd with both books has possession of both books, that picture will exist online. So you should drop that map in chat.
Yep.
Chat would appreciate that.
Working on it.
But yeah, there's always been an issue with why did Shanshan go the wrong way around the planet? Because there was sort of just a mass imbalance. Either Randland's planet is not the same size as ours, or there's missing land. Like, there was kind of just these fundamental incongruities that a lot of people have done some really complicated, Ptolemaic level complicated, one might say, headcanons to get around. Robert Jordan just gave us a nice canonical, here's what's wrong with it. And okay, so I'm looking at the two maps now, and basically, yeah, the Westlands have been shrunk, particularly the part that our people come from. Shara is pretty much the same size, and Shanshan is just, it's gained almost like 50 to 100% again more mass than it had before. It's huge.
Right. It looks much more like a boot and much less like, it's like if someone took a boot and before it cut off the entire foot part of the boot.
Yeah,
and now,
that's a really good way of putting it. It was just straight down, the like ankle and heel, but none of the rest of the foot. And now the rest of the foot is there. Mm-hmm. Which means that most of Shanshan's in the southern hemisphere.
Yes.
Actually, the vast majority of the Shanshan nation is in the southern hemisphere, whereas the entirety of the Westlands, including Shara, is above the equator. So they're like literally worlds apart. They're across both the latitude and the longitude from each other. They're in opposite quadrants.
And now you can see, leaving from the tip of the boot up to like Tenshiko and up to Abu Dar, that seems to be a much more reasonable route for them to take in the new map. It's also relatively short compared to perhaps going the other way.
You're right. By extending the boot to the east, they've chopped like maybe 1,000 miles off of that distance that Shanshan had to sail.
Oh, at least I can't even tell there's no scale. There's no mile scale. Well,
I feel like the scale bar on the original map is like 600 miles. I'm totally eyeballing it.
There is a scale, but it's a little hard for me to decipher.
But it's a huge difference. It totally changes the conversation about where they should have sailed and what the logical route would have been. It's a vastly improved map. I'm so freaking excited to get this book. Oh my God. I want it. I want it so bad.
Yeah, it sounds like this is like someone taking a serious look at the notes and actually giving us what we want out of them, as opposed to maybe just the little tidbits that have gotten dropped out from people who've had a chance to look at the notes but haven't had a chance to necessarily dig into them for a long period of time.
Yeah, well, when Robert Jordan irately tells you what you got wrong, you get a pretty clear way of interpreting what the notes are supposed to be pointing at. So from the map, we can do a nice cinematic TV-style zoom down to a single ship, down to a fleet of ships, then to the head ship, then to a room inside the ship. And thus begins Chapter 14, What a Veil Hides, with our symbol being the Shanshan insectile helmet.
And apparently the veil hides the daughter of the Nine Moons.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, and if you've been paying attention, this is when you really find out, like, this person is Matt's future wife.
Yeah, this was the moment when you realized that there was no getting out of it for Matt. Right? Matt has been harping on how he can't get out of it forever, and you're like, I don't know. And then you meet Tu-Wan, and it's like, oh, yeah, no, that is set in stone, Matt. You were right about that. Sorry.
And this is the chapter where it becomes set in stone for her.
Yeah. I mean, technically it was the evening before, but...
Well, yes.
Yeah. All right, so I will read us in. The victory of Kidron rolled on long sea swells, making the gilded lamps in the stern cabin swing on their gimbals. But Tu-Wan sat calmly as the razor in Selusha's sure hand slid across her scalp. Through the tall stern windows, she could see other great ships crashing through the gray-green swells in sprays of white, hundreds of them row on row, stretching to the horizon. 4 times as many had been left at Chanchico. The Hriagel, those who come home. The Karen, the return, had begun. A soaring albatross seemed to be following the Kidron, an omen of victory indeed, though the bird's long wings were black instead of white. It must still mean the same thing. Omens did not change according to location. An owl calling at dawn meant a death and rain without clouds an unexpected visitor, whether in Imfaral or Noranum Shar. The morning ritual with her dresser's razor was soothing, and she needed that today. Last night, she had given a command in anger. No command should be issued in anger. She felt almost Sai Mosief, as if she had lost honor. Her balance was disturbed, and that boded as ill for the return as a loss of Sai Ter, albatross or no albatross.
There's so much in that opening paragraph. You've got the prophecy from last night. You've got the Shan Chan names. You've got the places in Shan Chan. I mean, there's just so much to talk about just in that opening, 2 paragraphs. So
much lore.
Yeah.
So much lore dropped throughout this whole chapter, and it just hits you right out of the gate. I love this chapter for that reason. It's just info.
Right, yeah. Because you're in the Daughter of the Nine Moon's head, and she's thinking about places and locations and politics and important things in the Shan Chan world. So it's one of those few places where it's like, oh, here's a list of actual city names and weird things and, old tongue words that we're not used to hearing.
And things that never get explained. This is the most efficient and thorough kind of world building. The victory of Kidron. We know enough about boats to understand that the victory of Kidron is definitely a major battle that was won. This ship was commissioned as part of a victory fleet to commemorate some big rebellion being put down in some province. Just based on what we know about how boats get named, right? You learn
and the
all of
Shan
that
culture, yeah,
all of that about Shan Chan just from literally the first 4 words of the chapter. The victory of Kidron is oh, this is a power that likes to flex when it wins over its enemies.
Yeah, then you get some old tongue rules. The Raigul, those who come home, and the Karen.
Hriagel. That's how Kate says it. Hriagel. But yeah, this is those who come home and the return. And I have gotten into some debates about if there are 2 parties to this or 3. It's wild.
Right, because I feel like there's those who come. Isn't there the Forerunners, right?
Yes.
And then I feel like the Regal. Sorry. Those who come home come later. And then the whole thing to me is the Karen, the return. The Forerunners combined with the Regali.
Yes. That is how I see it too. And not everyone on the internet agrees with me.
Interesting. Okay. and we didn't come up with that ahead of time. We didn't talk about that ahead of time. That's just, we both came up with that independently in terms of how many parties there are.
That's why we're friends and podcast together, is because we see things the same way, unlike certain parties who will remain unnamed, who I am not podcasting with.
Well, now I want you to name them. Wait, who are you talking about?
I just couldn't believe this person. It's fine. They know who they are. They know what they did.
She talks about how omens are the same in 2 different places. And you've got this Imfrel or Noreen Mishar, 2 different locations again,
never come again.
But we can say, locations that are far away from each other in Shan-Chen.
Yes, very far away. These two places probably represent opposite ends of the empire, whatever that empire may look like. These are probably it's like saying, from Florida to Alaska, say. And omens get a little tiresome with the Shan-Chen, but they're also fun because clearly it's their way of tapping into like Taviran and what Min sees and the way that foretellings work and Aes Sedai can do, or channelers can do prophecy. But it's also like such a fumbling, bumbling, superstition-shaped like mess. It's really interesting.
And none of it's verifiable, ever.
And yet, like, it's clearly based on doomseers and Aes Sedai prophecies and foretellings, which are like a thing. So it's more than prophecy in our world, because we don't have magic people who just like, give prophecies like they do.
But I think they're basically taking, you may remember old computers used to have like punch cards that you could like punch out the holes and run them through the machine, and that's how you like programmed it. I'm too young to
remember them, but I know what you're talking about.
Yes, I should say, have you heard of them?
Yes, I've seen pictures.
I feel like this is somebody saying, hey, this is a really cool program that runs this thing. I'm going to hold it up to the sky and look through the holes, and that's going to tell me what the future holds. Just because that they think, but it's like, no, that's not. Yes, it is a good program, but you're using it wrong and applying it to the world in a way that doesn't make any sense.
Nah, I'd push back at that and say it's more like the Golden Compass. I'm going to agree with Keith in chat. It's much more like the alethiometer in Golden Compass. Your ability to interpret it from a triangulation of symbols can be good or bad, but like the thing itself is demonstrably responding to real things. It's a magic device. It's not purely following the usual rules.
I would say the Doomseers are certainly seeing something that's real, but the omens based on what the Doomseers see, I think is just complete made up bunk. I don't think what happens in the natural world is then symbolic of what's going to happen in the future in the wheel. I think it has to be a vision. I think it has to be a foretelling.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the lack of having a Doomseer in however many 100 years, I forget what they say when they get Min on, but they're like, we haven't had a real Doomseer in such a long time. Like, yeah, they're definitely working from misinterpreted journals and like, again, strange Ptolemaic sort of like mathy shit to like try to make sense of how the Doomseers did it, make it mathy instead of magic. It's very hard to say, but I will also say that when the three porpoises sound, right when she's about to tell Anath something, when she thinks about how luck is what kept anyone from hearing the prophecy that the Damani made, like, can there be ways of noticing that that there is Taviran twisting in the world around you through things that are far more subtle than baskets of bread falling into perfect circles? Is that what they decided was going on with Doomseers way back then,
that maybe the prophecies or the omens are tuned into Taviran, if nothing else.
I'm spitballing, but I have to believe that when there were Doomseers who could actually doomsee, that people wanted to understand it and make it something that would outlast that person. Like, I want to give Shan-Chen academics credit for being on the wrong track for the right reasons, is what I want to give them credit for.
Yeah, I don't want to give them that credit.
I'm not surprised. Honestly.
I don't think they deserve it. I think they're in a completely made up space they're stealing something and doing it wrong, and it means nothing.
Yeah, well, we'll agree to disagree on that.
That's fair. I mean, and again, this is one of those things where I started by saying there's no proof either way. It's unverifiable prophecies because they're so vague, like somebody will have good luck today, like they don't mean a lot.
But hold to your chosen course is something she desperately needs to do in that moment, because if Anath Semirhage gets wind of what she's thinking, if she gives herself more into her hands and becomes more of her under the thumb puppet, like that spells really, really bad things for Matt's arc. So she needed an omen the way she understood it in order to get to Virend. That's not a prophecy. That's a tweak to her decision-making process.
Sure.
So, just anyway.
I mean, you can make decisions based off of, astrological signs. Doesn't mean that the astrological sign is like accurate or specific to you in any way, shape, or form.
As the legend in chat is saying, daily horoscopes from the natural world.
Exactly. That's
very much following that vibe. But the whole fact that Aes Sedai can do foretelling and that doomseers are a thing is just like, I want to think that once upon a time they weren't completely pie in the sky nonsense.
I mean, I get the idea that maybe they based it off of what they were learning from the doomseer. I just don't think it means what I don't think the word means what you think it means, like
chat 3 dolphins in retrograde means I'll meet my future husband this week.
Yes. So we get introduced to one of my favorite tertiary characters, which is Selucia, who is a badass who loves to fuck with Matt. Her and Matt's relationship is absolutely hilarious because she's often the person he has to outwit to get to Tuon. But at the same time, she kind of likes Matt and I think approves of him a little bit eventually.
She's Tuon's real mother.
Right.
She is the gatekeeper to actually getting to court Tuon. Right.
That's a good way of describing it. But she's also badass as hell because she's been raised basically since birth to be Tuon's bodyguard.
She spent 25 years, and I'm assuming that means she was 5 when she started training. So presumably she was 30 when she graduates from ninja school. Yeah. She spends 25 years training to be a personal servant, a ninja, probably a million household domestic tasks she can do. I bet she can cook and clean like a motherfucker to make sure that there's no bugs or poison anywhere. She's everything. She's the emotional support. She's political support. She's security. She's everything. And she does half of it in secret. If there is a Mary Sue canonically in the books, it might be Selucia because she can literally do everything.
Right. It's actually the first 25 years of Selucia's life have been training for those jobs. So that's the first 25. That doesn't say after 5 or anything like that. That's from 0 to 25. Her entire life has been training to fight, from the cradle.
Right. It's what should have happened with Gawain instead of just here, swear an oath when you're a child and then be a princeling forever. This is what someone like Gawain should have gotten. It's hey, so this is your job. You're going to train for it really effectively.
But he's such a good swordsman.
Just to clarify, in case anyone's confused, she's not Tuon's real mother, but she is effectively Tuon's mother. She is the emotional mother. The Empress just squeezed her out. That's the end of the Empress's maternal involvement.
She has no care for her children. She wants them to fight and kill each other, right? As we get shortly, 2 of her siblings had died in the struggles so far. 3 tried to kill her. A sister and a brother had made Daco Vale, and their names stricken from the records as firmly if they had been discovered, they could channel, right? That's 5 of her siblings that have either been killed or made basically slaves.
Yeah, her mother does not care about her. But Selucia cares, partially because it's her job, but also demonstrably because she wants to. So she's very much more emotionally close to Tuon.
Because she did that thing where she could have, had any appointment in the kingdom, and she chose to continue to be her maid. So it's oh yeah, you could have done anything in the world, and you chose to keep doing what you're doing.
Right. That's a sign of love.
Yeah.
I mean, however the relationship started, that's how it's continuing. And also, because Jordan likes to do weird contrasts, he has Selucia look like a literal Barbie. Long blonde hair, perfect hourglass figure, tall, cream skin. She's just this quintessential, essence of Barbie style beauty. And then there's Tuon, who's this little tiny black girl that barely has curves and obviously has no hair because that's the correct thing for her station. It's just the contrast between them of this stately Barbie with half her head shaved and just this little China doll, dark China doll with no hair. Just It's so funny. The pairing of them is like, if this was a Hollywood movie, you would expect the relationship to be very different, right, than what it is. So Lucia's horrified by the idea of anyone stepping above their station. Meanwhile, she looks like she's an 11 on the hotness scale, right?
So I'm now headcanoning Lucia as Mohawk, Rambo, Barbie.
That's literally who she is. Oh my God. Yes. Yes. It's a delightful subversion of tropes, shall we say. And then Tu-On has this thought that is just so quintessential for the female experience in so many ways. She could ride with the best. She excelled at wrestling and the suitable use of weapons, but she had always had to exercise her mind to impress. I mean, except for the part where you actually get people to be impressed by your mind. That's not a normal part of the female experience. But when you're the Empress's daughter, I guess it's different. But it's just like she gets underestimated so much. That is a huge part of her arc in terms of how she interacts with people, is yet another person who's underestimating me. That's probably part of why she likes Matt, honestly, is because once he gets to know her, he very much stops underestimating her.
She's impressive. You know, what do they say? Big things come in small packages. I think she's the epitome of that. Like, there's just a lot going on with her. And yeah, there's a lot going on with Tu-On, I think, you know, and there's definitely areas and compartmentalization and trauma. And, you know, you can't say that Tu-On hasn't been made the victim for a good chunk of her life in terms of the danger she's been put in, the way, the lack of any emotional support she's gotten from most of her family, you know, except in these very circuitous ways, like with Lucia and with her previous truthsayer, who was probably a little more honest with her and a little more kind than one of the Forsaken.
Than the promise of pain herself.
Right. The one who scares everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. She is traumatized and put on a pedestal and also infantilized and taken not seriously. It's a hell of a whiplash to shape a young mind. And yeah, she's a terrible person, but she's also come from terrible circumstances. And that's true. She's been horribly victimized.
So, Neferi died 2 years ago, and we all know at this point about 2 years ago what happened. All the Forsaken got out. So,
yep.
You know, the assumption is that's about how long Semirog has been, you know, basically advising the next in line and has had her under her thumb, and probably was one of the reasons that the return happened in the first place. No,
the return was they started building the ships like generations prior to actually setting sail.
Right.
It was set in motion by Ishii when he got the whole, like, you should go over to this other continent and take it over thing. I mean, there's definitely some Forsaken fuckery, but no, she couldn't actually make the whole Karen happen in just 6 months.
No, but I was just thinking she might trigger the launching time. Just to be like...
Yeah, I mean, she definitely could choose the exact moment. That makes sense. It was going to happen somewhere in this period of time, but she was able to hasten it by 6 months or something. It'd be like, no, we're good. Let's go. Mm-hmm. Also, we get the time jump or the time stamp that it's been 3 years since Tu-On started shaving her head completely. Well, having Lucia shave her head. Because she says, do you still think after 3 years that I'd leave a patch of stubble? So that lets us know it's been 3 years since she became the current station she's at. So before Semirog got out of the bore and into the everything.
Which I can't think of any real story behind that we find out about later, where she ascends to, what is that? The next in line? Daughter of the Nine Moons? That's probably when she became the Daughter of the Nine Moons, was 2 years ago. Or 3 years ago, right?
Yeah. No, on her 16th naming day, when her head was first shaved.
Oh, okay.
That's the next or 2 paragraphs down. So this is letting us know how old she is. She was 16 3 years ago. So she's 19 now, and it's okay for Matt to lust after her. It's fine. She's not a child.
Because Matt, at this point, is 20.
21? 20.
I mean, you'd have to argue about exactly when his birthday was, right? Because it's been just over 2 years since they left the Two Rivers. They were 18 when they left the Two Rivers.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah. So, yeah. So yeah, they've got a 1 year age gap. I think, no, he says when he figures out what her age is that she's only 2 years younger than him. So he reckons himself as 21 by the time that comment gets made.
Right.
So but yeah, she's 19. We're getting a very clear, if you do the math, she's 19. So however, she looks like a 12-year-old. She is, in fact, a 19-year-old.
And so she decides to wear a veil instead of the Raven and Roses. And that's basically her way of saying, I am going just as High Lady Tuon, not as Daughter of the Nine Moons. And that's her penance for beating up her Damane.
Right.
So she's self-punishing here because, and we can, this is one of those because we can keep going back. She's like, okay, I'm arriving in a new world. She's going to go to her favorite Damane and say, can you basically do a foretelling for me? And Lydia does this foretelling, and Tuon does not like what she hears.
No, she does not.
Beware the fox that makes the ravens fly, for he will marry you and carry you away. Beware the man who remembers Hawkwing's face, for he will marry you and set you free. Beware the man of the red hand, for him you will marry, and none other. So, that's yeah, you're getting married 3 times over, right? And you have no choice in who that person is.
Here are 3 signs by which you will know the man that you will marry.
Right. And just like Matt, I don't think she wants to get married, right? I think that's the whole, in a lot of ways, they do mirror each other. Neither one of them wanted to get married. They only got married because they felt like they had to because of prophecies and foretellings.
It's an arranged marriage by the pattern that also serves very politically and militarily expedient goals for both of them. But yeah, neither of them are interested in that. Neither of them wants to settle down. Neither of them is interested in finding a partner. Neither of them wants to have the resources or the headaches associated with that. But the pattern needs you married.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good that she got given that particular prophecy, which then made her want to hide who she was, so that way she could kind of stealth her way into Matt's reality. The part where he didn't know she was the Daughter of the Nine Moons for a minute, I think, influences his behavior towards her and helps ensure that he's able to marry her and carry her away and make her free, which is literally what he does.
But it also explains what she waits for, right? When people are like, well, why is she waiting and why isn't she saying the words back to him right away? She really has to make sure that he's got all 3 signs, that he can see Hawkwing's face, that he is the man of the red hand, and, the fox that makes the ravens fly, right? She's waiting for all those signs to come together before she says.
So she gets the fox that makes the ravens fly when she first meets him because she sees the ring on his finger.
Right.
And then shortly after that, asks him if he remembers Hawkwing's face while he's still in the palace.
And he says no. And then I think at some point he lets it slip. He's talking about something else about oh, it's not like when we blew the bloody horn and I talked to Hawkwing, and she's like, so you do remember Hawkwing's face.
No, she knows that he was lying.
Okay.
In that moment.
Yeah.
In her POV, she's like, it was the most obvious lie I have ever seen in my entire life when he said no to that question. So he remembers Hawkwing's face. So the third sign she doesn't have until he meets up with the band again, which is well down the road once he decides to leave. Once we are finished with our second circus plot.
Right.
That's when he meets up with the band. And that's when she decides to marry him because she has all 3 signs. I always wondered why. I figured she was just convinced at the Hawkwing's face thing, but you're right. She doesn't get the red hand, the true red hand. I mean, he has some of his people with him, but she doesn't get the full army that can save her from Suroth's bullshit. She doesn't get to see that until the end, and then she immediately marries him. All right. Yeah, no, I can't believe I never noticed that.
It's all prophecy. It's all prophecy. Yeah.
And yeah, he does remember Hawkwing's face in both capacities as his memories and from Horn of Valir.
We do get one mention here of someone, I thought, the Makura woman, which, interesting, it's the same phrasing that Elida uses to describe her. That Makura woman. Remember when she's thinking about her? So I don't know if that's deliberate or just a callback, but that's exactly how she's referred to. And that's the woman who slipped Nynaeve and company fork root for the first time.
Rhonda Makira, the yellow agent that drugged Nynaeve and Elaine in a dusty little town, and then Tom and Julian come in, and we get Julian's figs and mice thing. That's that experience. This is the bitch that drugged our girls and got figs and miced into crying in a corner.
And she ended up in the White Tower, and Elida ended up abusing the hell out of her, which is why she hates the Aes Sedai.
No, she didn't go to the White Tower. Elida wrote an order saying, make an example of her. Because she lost Nynaeve and Elaine, right? She sends off her letter saying, I had them, but I lost them. And the yellow agent reports to, or the yellow Aja reports to Elida and says, you know, this fucked up. Our agent fucked up, but here's some information. You know, let's thank her for her service and not punish her too much. And Elida writes, make an example in heavy script. So Rhonda Makira is going along doing her thing. And then one day some people show up and beat the living shit out of her and toss her shop. And she swears a lifelong blood feud against them and goes straight to the Shan-Chan with her fork root and insists on being front and center to as much damage as she can cause them forever because Elida's a petty bitch.
Just another example of the damage the Elida and the Black Aja are doing, sitting in the head of the White Tower, basically.
And that's not something that Alviarin made her do. That was something Elida did entirely on her own power. I don't even think Fane's influence can be blamed for that. I think that is pure Elida.
I was just about to go there. I was like, what about Fane?
Nah. That's just who Elida is. That's the kind of person that we get the impression from in, like, Eye of the World, which is pre-Fane. Like, and even in New Spring, like, just her... The reason she sends Teslin and Jolene to Abu Dar, right? It's just she's petty. And Alviar doesn't stop her because she's fine with Petty. Petty's fine. Petty doesn't get in the way.
Petty spreads the chaos. The next thing I have is Aneth standing by the railing in unrelieved black silk, outwardly undisturbed by the chill wind in spite of her lack of cloak or cape. Gee... what kind of people are undisturbed by the wind? Oh, yeah, Forsaken and Aes Sedai. So that's one of his... whenever we see someone who's not disturbed by the heat or the cold, you know, and isn't obviously, you know, an Ashaman or an Aes Sedai, I immediately go, well, that's a Forsaken candidate right there.
And we also, on the walk to Anath, we do get reminded that there is a literal Aes Sedai turned Suldam on this ship. Like, we have the entire spread of channels. We have a Forsaken, we have normal Suldam, and we have an Aes Sedai who's become a Damani on this ship. It's a lot.
Yeah, and that was someone that Tuon, you know, raised herself, which of course means that Tuon is someone who could learn to channel.
She has as much enjoyment in training Damani as in training horses. One of the creepiest and most condemning lines of Tuon's entire arc is that she's the kind of person that enjoys breaking another sentient being's spirit. She just enjoys that. She just personally enjoys that. It's like hard to be a Tuon apologist when that is her recreational joy. Ugh. It's gross. Complicated feelings about animal husbandry. Very, very uncomplicated feelings about applying that to human beings. But she did rescue this Aes Sedai who was, you know, withering away because she was miserable and kidnapped and in a strange land being abused and expected to be a slave for the rest of her life. And Tuon managed to brainwash her into being okay with living again.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those, like, would you rather live as a slave for occasional treats or be dead? You know, I guess once you buy into it, you just gotta buy into it wholeheartedly. Just be like, yep, this is my reward centers are getting hit by the treats, and I'm just gonna, you know, be this new thing. I'm gonna be the new name. I imagine that's one of the reasons they get the new name, is it helps people adjust to just be like, okay, that life is over, I'm this new person now.
Yeah, I mean, if you were going to make that commitment, a new name and a short-sighted focus on immediate pleasure would be the way to trick yourself into being okay with what's happening. That would be where sanity could be found. That would be the right kind of insanity to keep you going. But it's rough. Tuon's real proud of herself for not just doing slavery in general, but actively bringing a wild-caught person into the fold smoothly and without issue. And it's just, no, don't like you. Do not like you. I mean, I love you as a character. You're delicious to read, but oh, God, I hate you.
Can I just say one thing that's really cool about this prophecy is that Tuon requests it, and we actually get a prophecy on demand from Lydia, which is highly unusual. Most prophecies come to people completely uncalled for, without any sort of premonition. The fact that she's able to pull a prophecy out of thin air on demand is either remarkable or some Ta'Veren twisting.
I think it confuses me so much because Tuon implies that that's normal in Seanchan, to get, Damani can read your future. That's a normal thing that they go to. That's the implication. And it's not at all like prophecy works in the Westlands. The Westlands, it's 100, hardly anyone can do it, and they can't do it on command. Whereas in Seanchan, everyone can do it on command. It's very, again, I go back to what were the original Doomseers? What was going on with them? What information were they able to bring to bear on understanding how the pattern works before they died out as a true profession? How did that overlap with Suldam and Damani innovations and culture such as it is? How much is that something that's across all of Seanchan society versus just something that the blood or the Empress's family has access to? And obviously, and it's a prophecy that's very easy to interpret, which is, again, very different from the prophecies we get throughout most of the Westlands. Most of the Westland ones are high chant in the Old Tongue. This is here is a checklist of items to look for the Manual Mary. Mm-hmm.
I got nothing.
It's so weird.
It's a very weird, and it never comes up. We don't get her doing any other prophecies. This is a one-off from this one person, which makes me think it was. To me, it makes me think it was just Ta'Veren twisting, that Tuon went to this person and threw her little fit, which is, I'm the queen and I demand a prophecy now. And then Ta'Veren was just like, okay, here you go. The pattern was like, I'm going to give you one this time only. I guess it's not necessarily Ta'Veren so much as his pattern twisting, and that isn't normally common. That's the only thing, is that just you can demand it all day. It's just rare that you actually get one.
Yeah, maybe. And something I had always sort of missed until I did my notes for this is that she didn't demand that from the Aes Sedai. I always, for some reason, thought that she had demanded it from the Aes Sedai, and somehow just being a Damani had given her that ability, out of sheer terror. No, this is a native-born Seanchan Lydia, as opposed to Mylan, the other Damani. I don't know why. Lydia and Mylan aren't even similar names, but... No,
but they're mentioned together once, So, yeah, it seems like that's the one she's talking about, but it's not. She's talking about two different Damani, one right after the other.
Yeah. And so just her whole interaction with them is just all oh, she's so sweet and nice to them. But she's horrifically dehumanizing and very effectively mind controlling. It's gross if you remember that these are human beings that she's treating like, pets. But also, she's such a good dog owner. If you're okay with these people just being classified as dogs, she's a very good owner.
Aneth. A little bit about how Aneth, I can never remember her fake name.
Anath.
I always want Anath Summerog became the truth speaker, appointed by the Empress. So clearly Anath has the Empress under some form of compulsion. Mm-hmm. Because she just came out of nowhere and walked in, right? So, that goes back to my theory that doesn't Anath Summerog end up slaughtering the entire noble class?
The entire royal family, so that way Tuon is next in line, and then Suarth is in line after her, because she's killed everybody else in the royal succession back in Seanchan.
And my theory was always that she recognized the compulsion of the Crystal Throne. See previous episodes for all my theories about that. And that's how she was able to avoid it and shield herself against it, and then, basically slaughter everybody in the royal family pretty easily.
Yeah, I figure she went in there figured out what was going on with Seanchan politics by doing some power behind the throne stuff and just sort of waited until she had all the pawns positioned correctly, then executed her very, very bloody coup. But I think for a while she got in the Empress's ear and sort of just took over the power of the throne subtly and then blew everything up.
Because, it's not like the Seanchan don't have powerful channelers, right? Semirog isn't just going to go in there wielding fire and destroy the entire royal family. They have bodyguards. They have safeguards. They have channelers. She must have done something clever to isolate the royal family and kill them.
Yeah, definitely. They're pretty well protected even for a Forsaken. Like, they probably have all kinds of interesting memories preserved since the breaking, about how to keep your people safe from channelers and all that. So
yeah, it just makes me wonder if Suroth somehow took over the Crystal Throne and used that against the Empress and her family.
I mean, yeah, if she was compelling the Empress to give orders that led to her family all killing each other, right?
Right.
It's
right.
Something. Yeah, it was probably horrific and really over the top because we are talking about Semirog.
Mm-hmm. And we'll have to figure out what triggers that. That happens a little bit later.
Yeah, I'm not sure what triggers that. We'll have to look for Semirog getting information or something like that.
Something changing that makes it worthwhile to have chaos back in Seanchan.
Yeah. Maybe it's just Tuon vanishing. Given that Semirog has no idea where she went. So yeah, Anath starts chiding Tuon.
Right.
You hide your face in a way, and now you are just the High Lady Tuon. So we're getting, the lore we need to understand what the Daughter of the Nine Moons is as an office, as opposed to the individual who holds that office.
There also seems to be some implication that Lydia doesn't remember her own prophecies, because if nobody else overheard it, Lydia could still repeat it if she remembered what it was, and not remembering your own prophecies seems to be a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
So I would assume Lydia doesn't remember her own, or else they would go to Lydia and be like, well, tell me what you said.
Right. Yeah, it's so weird. Like, how can you do that on command? Yeah, maybe it's just like a royal pastime. It's just asking for prophecies, and it's like going to the casino. Like, periodically, you are going to get a small hit of dopamine to reward you for going, right?
And of course, she, Semirog takes the job where it's like you get to say whatever you want, no one can punish you, and you get to basically yell at somebody.
You can slap them even.
Maybe. Well, historically, that's something that happened and was allowed, but it's,
Right. Hasn't been a thing in a long time. But everyone in the noble class has a truth speaker. The Empresses or the Imperial family just has to take it over the top like everything else because Imperial family.
But yeah, so Tuon reminisces on the one time she actually asked Aneth to punish her, and she was like, thoroughly, that was like, it was fair, but oh my god, that was just thoroughly like, basically, Semirog took it as close to the line as she could and punished her, made it as painful as possible within the confines of what she was allowed to do, which of course the Lady of Pain would be able to do, right? And so now Tuon's like, no, I'm good, I don't need to be punished again. I think we are beyond that now.
The line, the woman had been almost tender about it in an odd fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, I was just talking about how creepy and horrific and easily condemned Tuon is, and then you get this line from about Semirog, and it's just like, oh my god, Semirog's the worst. I feel bad for Tuon now. She's a slaver, and I feel so bad for her. She likes breaking people's spirits, and I just feel horrible for her. Semirog is so scary. I love how little RJ gives us about her. It's just all scary. She looms so large as a big boss that Rand is going to have to face at some point.
Well, I mean, even the other Forsaken are scared of her.
Exactly. Like, yeah. I think if the Dark One had a body, the Dark One would be scared of her too. Shidar Haran's a little bit like, I don't know.
Yeah, stay away from her.
So yeah, she refuses to take the penance, refuses to take the advice. She just smiles and nods and does what she needs to do on the outside while absolutely going her own way on the inside.
And of course, she immediately is like, the High Lady Suroth must be commended and her ambition must be looked into, which is basically saying, like, yes, she's done a lot, but usually someone who's doing that much is trying to, become empress, perhaps, like she's trying to do, right? I mean, there's that whole Suroth wants power. And, of course, Aneth is defending her. I'm sure Suroth only has the best interests of the Empire for ambition. But why? Because they're both dark friends. Then that goes back to, when the girls got kidnapped for the first time and got taken through the ways by Leandrin. And that was all Suroth and Moghedien and... Not Moghedien.
Leandrin, and there wasn't a Forsaken involved. It was Leandrin and Suroth.
Well, I assume Leandrin got her orders from...
from Ishi, yeah.
Is it Ishi?
Yeah, at that time. That's Great Hunt.
Okay, yeah,
so they're still all acting on old orders from when Ishi was the only one out.
There wasn't a Forsaken in the White Tower yet, probably.
No, I don't think so. But yeah, it's something that Suroth thinks about, that, she goes too far too fast. She's going to end up in the Tower of Midnight or the Tower of Ravens or whatever. She thinks about that very early on, that when she gets thrown back from Falma, right? And she's going to say, no, instead of retreating to the return that's coming behind us, I'm just going to go back and I'm going to make it work. She thinks about how that's really risky for her because it's so ambitious. And then later on, after Tuon vanishes, she's in sort of a power struggle with General Galgun because he's, looking to make her take a bunch of the fall for her own bullshit so that he can capitalize on that by accusing her of being too ambitious. So it's kind of an open secret that that's what she's doing because that's just how all Shan-Chan are. But the fact that she's doing it as a dark friend, makes it more spicy. And that's why, Anath is very much not interested in going after her because that's a pawn she has on the board. Yeah. Why would she take her own pawn off the board? That's silly.
Right. And she's like, no, leave it there. It's fine. It's not a threat to you. I promise.
Exactly. I promise.
Yeah.
It's fine.
I promise. It's fine. So Tuon basically lays out her priority in coming to the coast, which is she has to make contact with the Dragon Reborn as soon as possible. Which is ironic considering back then, when she's lost with Matt, Rand's trying to make contact with her. And that's how... Anyway, it's the whole thing. Basically, she and Rand are trying to make contact for a good chunk of the next two books.
They both want this meeting, and yet somehow wars are happening instead. And it's because the prophecies in Shan-Chan are propagandized to include the Crystal Throne.
Yeah, I mean, these are known as the Essanik cycle, Essanik cycle, which is the Shan-Chan version of the Koreathon cycle. And there's some question about how realistic they are. They could be, basically a fork in the prophecies, right? They had the Koreathon cycle when they left and went to Shan-Chan. They took it with them. But this is an altered version of it. Maybe it's altered because of propaganda. Maybe it's altered because of a foretelling.
Or a doomseer thing, or... Yeah, that's the only way to make it work, because Rand does bow to her. And it's a big part of his Zen Rand arc, going around tying shit up and getting it ready for the final battle. So,
but he only bows to her because the prophecy says he has to bow to her, and she's like, "Well, you have to do that." And he's like, "Here, let me fulfill the technical requirements of the prophecy so we can move on." And it's a little weird because that is very much one of the most directly self-fulfilling prophecies, where it's like, the prophecy says you're going to kneel. Okay, I'll kneel. Good. Is the prophecy fulfilled? Can we move on? Let's go. Which
I think supports the idea that it was only ever propaganda.
Yeah, but then how? But is it
because he does it because she insists on it?
Well, yeah,
and he doesn't do it to the throne. He does it to her, and that's enough of a logic loop to just work. Prophecies very rarely happen because someone's told how to fulfill them. That's basically not a thing. It's always, I guess in hindsight, that's how that worked. For him to just be like, what are the rules? Okay, I'll do it. It feels like that was too neat and easy to be a real prophecy. It feels like propaganda to me. But it works because she is the throne, but she's not the real throne, and the real throne has magical properties that bind people's brains. So if the Dragon Reborn had actually bowed to the Crystal Throne, then he would have been under the throne's compulsion, and that would have turned out very differently for the last battle. So
you're convincing me.
So if Rand had bowed to the real throne, that would have fulfilled what they wanted, and it would have been bad. But when he just sidesteps it, then Sure, your prophecy was correct. Go you. Can we move on now? I don't know. I don't.
No, you talked me into it. I'm thinking, I'm like, oh yeah, propaganda for sure. So a few more things about Anath being creepy. She feels ownership over Tuon. To me, I think that comes from the agreement between Semirhage, Damandred, and Missana, because they've each picked a realm in which to have ownership over, right? Like, Missana went to the White Tower, which is technically, the wheel around which the Westlands rotates. Damandred took over Shara, and Semirhage took over the Return, or basically the Shan-Chan interaction, the head of the Shan-Chan, daughter of the Nine Moons. Mm-hmm. I almost wanted to say daughter heir, and I just thought how funny it is that those two are actually kind of related, the daughter heir and the daughter of the Nine Moons. They both have a very similar title, and just how much they do butt heads.
They probably were both called princess way back when. It's a very old term, but,
And again, that's where I always thought Matt and Elaine would make a good pairing.
God, they'd be such a hot mess. I think Matt and Galad would be a better pairing.
Talk about irresponsible pair.
Better that than Matt and Gawain. Gawain doesn't deserve anybody, not even Matt.
And then this line from Anath: "You must not let him learn how dangerous you are to him until it is too late for him to escape." What makes her so dangerous?
Okay, I just thought of this right now as you asked the question. But the sad bracelets need two women. And Tuon can wear a bracelet. She can be a Suldam.
Yep.
So maybe Anath's plan was... I never thought about this until literally right now, but she can literally be one of the attackers on the Dragon Reborn.
I think just having the sad bracelets is what Anath is referring to.
Oh, just not using them, just having them.
Just having them.
I don't know. I kind of like my light bulb idea better. It's just yes, and the plausible.
Right. Well, and I kind of always assumed that, of course, Tuon would be one of them, because they would have Suldam on those bracelets attached to him.
Make more sense.
Yeah. So,
but still,
she is Suldam, right? So she could be one of the ones who is controlling him.
Yeah, and I mean, Anath does take on Tuon's visage for the event, so maybe she's kind of just describing how the interaction is going to go according to her plan. Doesn't really matter who's in the Tuon appearance, real Tuon or fake Tuon.
No.
Either way, physically Tuon's going to get close to him, and then hell's going to break loose.
Right.
Oh, man. I almost wish that had happened. It would have been so cool.
You can see how, with the prophecy saying he will kneel before them, they can think when he kneels, that's when we will snap the collar onto him.
Because Tuon would be the only person physically close enough to do that, right? The Dragon Reborn's going to be very, 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 very cautious of letting people get that close to him. But like the Daughter of the Nine Moons can be just as cautious, and so she'd actually get within arm's reach. Yeah, I bet that's literally her original plan, is to have Tuon be the person to snap the collar onto Rand. And if she dies in the attack...
And this is long after Suroth took the sad bracelets off of Gareth Bryn and...
Bael Domon
and... Egyanin.
Yeah, we don't see that happen, but it has to have happened long since at this point.
Yes. I mean, they talk about it in a story when they encounter Nynaeve. They tell her, like, oh, actually, yeah, we did. Because...
they give it to Suroth for some fucking reason. I forget why exactly, but they go to Suroth with it, and she's like, I'll take care of it. And
Suroth boards them, I think, and searches them, and Gareth Bryn's like, drop it off the edge, and again, Egyanin's like, no, why would I do that? Just give it to her. We'll earn us favor and get us out of here.
You're right. And Domon can't really fight with the whole situation. So they get... it gets forcibly taken back by Suroth, who immediately reports it, and so thus Semirhage has had it since. So when did Domon and Egyanin run into Suroth?
I mean, almost immediately after they were given the sad bracelets, which
they were probably sailing out to sea and ran into her coming on her way back for Invasion Part 2.
That's what I would imagine.
Yeah.
Because that was when did they got the bracelets when Tanchico happened, which was end of book 4, I believe. So that's end of Shadow Rising is the end of Tanchico. Or is that book 5?
I don't know. That might be.
But in that book 4 or 5 era is basically when they lose the bracelets.
5. Thank you, chat.
5. Okay. Keith is saying 5. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been a long time. She's had plenty of time to make a plan based on having that artifact in her possession. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I almost wish this plan had managed to go off. It would have been so cool. It would have been so epic. You thought Do Might As Wells was bad, you know?
Right. I mean, the collaring is the use of the sad bracelet. I mean, it's essentially what ends up happening, right?
It gets very Sanderson Goldberg machine about it.
Yeah. Well, and Shadow Haran just stepping in to, like, unlock everything and give her everything and set her up always felt a little Deus Ex Machina.
Like, as literal as it can get it for that fucking trope.
Right, like, exactly. It is literally a god stepping in to do, fix things to force Rand.
Yeah.
Everyone does everything right, but no, the Dark One's just going to put Semirog in a place that, and it accomplishes what he wants, which is it gives Rand access to the true power, which makes him a threat to the survival of the planet.
Yeah, it's...
Deus Ex Shadow.
Deus Ex Shadow, yeah. Yes. She had more advice, but Tuon let it wash over her. She listened enough to hear, yet it was nothing she had not heard 100 times before. Ahead of the ship she could make out the mouth of a great harbor, Ebu Dar, from where the Karen would spread, as it was spreading from Tenchiko. The thought gave her a thrill of pleasure, of accomplishment. Behind her veil, she was merely the High Lady Tuon, of no higher rank than many others of the blood. But in her heart, always, she was Tuon Athem Kore Peandrag, daughter of the 9 Moons, and she had come to reclaim what had been stolen from her ancestor. Manifest that destiny, you colonizing bitch.
Yep. And that's where we really get Daughter of the 9... If, you've known that Matt is looking for the Daughter of the 9 Moons... And here she says, I am the Daughter of the 9 Moons. You're like, oh shit, this is going to be Matt's stuff. Also, interesting that she's Tuon Athen. Shouldn't she be her full name? Shouldn't it be Fortuana Athem Corpendrag?
No, she just takes the new name for shits and giggles when she ascends the throne.
Okay, so Fortuana isn't her name until she takes the throne.
Right.
That's actually an extension of Tuon. I thought she was Fortuana right now, and she was just being called Tuon as a short name.
I guess I don't actually know that answer. That's how I assumed it always worked, was that she just picked a name off of a baby list name because, reasons. I always thought it was completely separated from her name as Tuon. And I assumed that she had a name before she turned 16 and was named Tuon. But I guess I don't know that.
Keith is saying you're correct. Yeah. But what I do love is that her name, Fortuana, is Fortune, right? Matt is literally marrying Fortune.
Oh, I never thought of that. He literally marries Lady Luck?
He literally is marrying Lady Luck, yes.
Oh, shit. I literally never put that together, that he marries Fortune.
Yeah.
Damn. So on the nose, I missed it.
Right? And that's where I thought Tuon is actually a shortening of Fortuona, and which was always her original name because that's... But you're right, I'm thinking about that backwards. She picks the name Fortuona when she ascends.
I like it better if this is just her little, infantilized nickname version of it, though. I kind of wish that was true. I don't think it is, but I kind of wish it was.
But yeah, we are... definitely getting back into Matt stuff this book, right?
Oh, because Matt and Tuon. The Tuon arc intersecting Matt arc situation is that's the fireworks that are going off right now.
Right, because next chapter is our first Matt chapter back after the wall falls on him. We didn't get him all of last book. We didn't get him at the beginning of this book, the first, however many 14 chapters out of 30. It's almost the first half of this book, right?
It's not until chapter 15.
It's not until chapter 15, and this is only a book with 30 chapters in it. So it really is half this book that we're not getting Matt. So it's like a book and a half where he was under a freaking wall. And yeah, now he's back, and this is in need of a bell founder, which is, the whole creating cannons and guns and that really cool arc that we get to experience.
Many firecrackers are headed at Matt right now. We're about to see sparks fly.
The next 5 Matt chapters are some of the classic Matt chapters, right? Like, hanging around in the palace, encountering Tuon. You know, Tuon tries to buy him. He fights the Golem. He meets Noel. He talks to Eludra and Val and Luca's show. Like, this is Matt with Gian and Domon. This is just like, this is essence of Matt book. This next set of chapters is kind of what makes Winter's Heart not really part of the slog to me, right? Like, this is the fun part where you actually get to have fun in this book, you know? It's
funny to use Tuon as an on-ramp into the Matt stuff, but this really is our on-ramp into a really, really big dose of Matt stuff, a huge section of what we think of when we think of lovable rogue Matt, who also has some really problematic things happen to him. Like, right. This is that section, and Tuon is our little, like, the blinker goes on, like, hey, by the way, we're about to see Matt again after a book and a half of him being stuck under a wall.
And this was really fun world building and character building, because, like, all of a sudden you get this portrait of this new character who's coming into Matt's life. 3
very important characters get introduced here, along with a huge amount of information about Sean Chen, who has mostly been an enigma so far. We get so much about them, and we get the introduction of 3 critical characters, Tuon, Selucia, and Semirhage. I mean, Semirhage we knew about, but, like, we get a lot more insight into who she is and how she's going to play with the plot in this chapter.
Right. And I guess we've sort of just been like, oh yeah, of course, you know, spoilers, Amath is Semirhage. But it wasn't necessarily obvious from this chapter if you didn't know that ahead of time.
No.
There's a couple of big clues, but...
it makes you suspicious. It's not spelled out yet. It gets spelled out once Surath is meeting with her. But right. Yeah, it's fun. I really like this chapter. It's a very, very good one for the story, for how quickly you can build up so many different things in not much pages.
Yeah, this feels very, very much like a callback to some of his older stuff where he had so much to foreshadow that every sentence felt like it had meaning going forward. Like, oh, this is going to mean something later, and that's going to mean something later. And, you know, this is a reference to something that matters. Because the characters matter going forward, the plot matters going forward, and there's interesting things going on in the background that he's not telling you about. You got Forsaken involved. Like, this isn't, you know, a bunch of kin meeting off in a room that never matters again.
No, this is a loaded chapter with meaning. It's really important. So yeah, thank you to everyone for joining us, both live and in the future. I appreciate you.
There will be robots. Probably not this future, though.
Yeah. You seen that flowchart from, like, SMBC where it's like all roads lead to robots killing humans?
Excellent. Yes.
Yeah, it's like all the different things that might happen. It all ends in robots exterminate humans.
It's funny. I've got this new daily job, and a big part of what I do is I work on these robots that move, like we work on wafers, right? So these wafers are round silicon things that we put layers of metal onto, and they need to be moved around very delicately. So inside the machine, there's actually robot handlers that, like, pick things up and move them around so people aren't touching them. I'm not worried about robots taking over the world anytime soon. Those things are they break so easily with the slight, you know, you pull a wire out, you pull out a hose, the stuff breaks down over time, you know, you have to constantly be repairing machines because they don't heal the way people and biological creatures do.
They don't learn.
Yeah, they don't learn. Like, any damage that happens accumulates. This idea that robots are going to last longer than biological things is like, not unless you have some serious maintenance going on, right? Moving parts break down so fast. So yeah, you're going to need like major robot doctors to take care of other robots before you're ever going to get to the point where, robots kill us all.
Which is obviously a good goal, because have you seen the mess we've made? No, only some of us. Only some of us have made a mess. Some of us are just suffering through it.
We've all contributed a little bit.
Some of us have contributed more than others.
Yes. We are all equal. Some of us are more equal than others.
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah.
And on that cheerful note.
Well, I was gonna say we all suffer from global warming equally, but that's not true either, because money gets you out of it.
Nothing is equally distributed.
Nothing,
as far as I can tell. Gravity, kinda. Not really. We have a very potato-shaped planet if you look at the gravitational field.
It's really funky. Yeah, there's a lot of variation in the gravitational field, both at like the poles versus the equator, and then just like density lumps.
Exactly. Like there's like a weirdly low density section in the Pacific Ocean. Like, why are you so low density there? What? It's very weird. There's the map of the anomalies. That's the super potato-shaped planet. If you just have a map of just an exaggeration of the anomalies, so it's like the flatter and curvier it is, the more it's normal, and then it does not line up with where the mountains and ocean basins are at all. It's a very, very mysteriously lumpy planet we have. There's a really cool quote in chat. "The future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed," by William Gibson. That's
followed immediately by "Don't quote me."
Well, no, but then below that, Abby said, "Oh, I did attribute it correctly." So I didn't read it into the record until it had been Google checked
Properly. All right, good.
I'm a brown. Okay.
All right, cite your sources. That's all I'm saying.
I'm citing the Discord chat, the most verifiable and error-free thing on the entire internet.
Oh, by the way, we didn't actually say what Mylan's Aes Sedai name was.
Because we're bad people.
Can you guess what it starts with?
Is it a P?
No.
C?
What do most names in the Wheel of Time
S.
start with if they're randomized? It starts with an S. Shireen.
Huh?
Shireen Keminel. Sheraine.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait,
wow,
do we ever learn what it is in the text?
Yeah, totally.
That's the one that Elaine is like, we're gonna both be lost and forgotten. Is that?
That's back in the Great Hunt.
So this is that Aes Sedai.
This is that Aes Sedai.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeesh.
Her warder is killed. That's one of the reasons why she's also like starving herself to death.
Oh, because she's in warder grief
grief.
on top of being kidnapped and tortured. Yeah, that would be rough. Does speak to Tuon's skill at bringing people back from the edge. I mean, that's a lot to pull someone through.
Right. And she was captured in Falma, shipped all the way back to Shan-Chan, and then came back to this world with Tuon. Yeah.
Some
so that's where she's been this whole time, basically.
Trade.
Yeah. She's been on a ship for a long time.
Man. Get that woman a landlocked home.
There's a note here that the nearly black green of the Shan-Chan that the soldiers are always described as using sounds like Charleston green, a paint color commonly used in Charleston, South Carolina, which is where Jordan's from.
Well, that reminds me, I had one more comment about this chapter. There's a lot of Ogier on this ship. Like, aren't they really heavy? It's like
They're certainly big.
of Ogier, like in armor on this ship.
Yeah, they don't talk about how close people are to each other on these ships for these long voyages. I that's one thing he kind of skipped over is like how many months are they on? Aren't they on the ship for like 3 months or something like that?
And there's 2 dozen Ogier gardeners on this ship alone. And yeah, no, it's definitely some hand wavy magic metaphysics for travel like nonsense. The whole like gardeners thing, we don't get much information about them in this chapter. I wanted it to be a thing where we get lots about them, but it's just they won't suicide if you die, but they also volunteered to come along. We just never get anything about the gardeners. There's so many cool breadcrumbs, and they literally go nowhere. So it's like, it's a breadcrumb. Ta-da!
They volunteered to protect her, so they must think that's reasonable and worthy for some reason. They support, obviously, they must support the Shan-Chan Empire, which is weird from what we know about Ogier, but the Ogier over there are nothing like our Ogier. It's
and like the humans will all like die if she does, but the Ogier won't, but they're equally devoted to protecting her. Like all the Death Watch guard stuff is just left as an exercise for the reader without any real payoff.
There's some really cool Death Watch Ogier guard art out there, which I appreciate, because that would be a cosplay.
Oh, Ogier Gardener, yeah, that'd be good.
Because they don't just put a long handle on their wood axe or a long handle on their one side of their shears. They have weapons.
Oh yeah.
And they're trained. Like, as devastating as the Ogier on the Westlands are in battle, they don't train for it.
No, they're just going at it with ferocity and a gardener's will to clear the fields. That's it.
Yeah, and they don't have custom weapons. They don't have custom armor. Can you imagine going up against something with custom armor and skin like wood?
That's a tank with a machine gun mounted on top.
Yeah. So yeah, if you take anything away from this chapter, it's be terrified of Ogier gardeners.
Very important life lesson for us in the real world.
Mm-hmm. And Semirog.
Yeah. It's too bad they don't kill her. That would have been cool.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. That was a great chapter, and a lot of talk about everything around the Wheel of Time in the world. Hopefully we get some sort of announcement about season 2 soon.
Ah, yes. Rings of Power is going along nicely, so one can hope that they will give us I'm really hoping that it's like, here's the teaser for season 2 of Rings of Power, and also here's the date for season 2 of Wheel of Time. Like, I'm really hoping those things give me the right kind of whiplash,
Yeah, I want them to give us something on the last episode of Rings of Power. Be like, now that you've watched all of Rings of Power, here's season 2 of Wheel of Time. Then we're gonna give you a teaser or a trailer or something to really
full trailer.
Salivate.
That's dope.
That would be dope. A full, because I think it's time.
I'm fucking ready.
Yeah.
I'm so ready.
So we're here today for some Shan-Chanigans.
All right, so backstory on this. Before we turned recording on, I posted to the Discord that the tea is being brewed, pull up a chair and get ready for some, how should I say this? Shan-Chan shenanigans. I'm like, I'm cute. I'm stereotypical. It's fine. Whatever. And then chat goes and gives us shenanigans from Tabernus, who's like, I'll see myself out. And then Abby comes in and says, Shan-Chanigans. And follows up by saying, I will not see myself out because I intend my puns. And maybe it's just the weed that I'm smoking, but I find this charming and delightful. And it's a really good way to start this chapter that is super dense and not light and funny at all. It's lore and stuff. And we're just going to start with the Shan-Chanigans.
All right, no more shenanigans in the chat. I mean it.
I love it. I love chat. Chat's the best.
Yeah, no, chat's great.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Thanks for showing up. Just kind of threw recording on real fast there. Haven't really finished our warm-up bullshit yet. But welcome to the party.
I mean, have we ever really finished the warm-up bullshit? It's all pretty much just warm-up bullshit.
I mean, at some point it transitions to end of episode bullshit.
Yeah, that's true.
So
that's true.
Clearly we do end it at some point.
And don't forget, there is some middle divergent tangents going off. What is doing that? Fuck.
Yeah. That we are going to be very distracted by that if you can't fix it.
Yeah, that's... Hold on. Are you sure it's coming from my end?
Yeah, because nothing on my end is allowed to make noise. I don't allow my devices to make noises at me.
I don't usually either.
And now it stopped. So, all right, fine. Let's just sit here forever.
But I'm sure right as we get into the deepest, most important level of conversation, it will start happening again and distract us. So welcome to technology. Yeah.
But no, it doesn't matter how long we wait. That's going to happen regardless.
That's true. That's true.
We might as well just get going, I guess, with our actually regularly scheduled
content. Yeah. Do we want to talk about SpoilerCon at all? This is our first real recording since then, right?
Right. Yeah. So this is our first time sitting down since SpoilerCon. You and I have talked a bunch, and I've been editing a bunch, so I feel like more has happened since SpoilerCon than has actually happened.
But no, we skipped last week, which was a good call because, oh my God, I was tired. So tired. And there was just a lot left to do in terms of wrapping things up and bookkeeping and making sure everybody, all the T's were crossed and the I's were dotted.
Yeah. And but now we're back to return to the book. And also, the day that this is recorded, in 2 days, you are going to get your first regularly scheduled normal episode again.
Which for them will have been in the past because they've now had a couple of episodes come out since then if they're listening to this.
What I'm saying is that it's October, and so your drought of regularly scheduled episodes is at an end. And you will be getting 2 episodes a week from now until we run out of those backlog episodes to publish. Like the drought is over. The September long, you only get 1 episode a week. That's done with now. Now you get 2 a week through sometime near the end of the year. I forget when it will take me to get through there, but that's a thing now that SpoilerCon is in the review. And SpoilerCon itself was a delight.
It was a delight, yes. I mean, it was so much fun to hang out with those people who I got to hang out with. The Kate, Michael, and Kramer Redding. Mix that up however you'd like into the proper form. They were delightful as always. I could not thank them enough for coming in and doing their thing. The costume contest was a lot of fun. It wasn't a contest. It was more just people showing off their costumes.
Yeah, it was just a little like catwalk fashion show. It was more of a fashion show. We'll call it a fashion show.
The drinking on Friday night was just absolutely over the top. Well, at least for me.
I saved that for Saturday.
Oh, okay. Yes, you did. My girlfriend never served you quite a few drinks, and I remember you passing out on the bed. Or falling asleep on the bed is more accurate.
Yeah. I did the retreat to the bed and just curl up and fall asleep. And then my warder was like, let's scoop you up and pour you into the correct bed. And then I spent the rest of the evening regretting how good Never is at tending the bar.
Yeah, she pours some good drinks, some strong drinks.
Those lemon drops, though.
Weren't they delicious?
Lemon drops.
Yeah. And you got to play D&D with Desmond. You got to play D&D with
we have a lot of D names in the larger group. We had a couple of people come that I had hung out with at WatCon, like Loyal's Library. We had a lot of old favorite people come back, people who have come multiple years in a row. It was a very small group, so I felt like I got to have like really good one-on-one time with everybody.
Same.
Rather than feeling like I missed people. Like WatCon was great, but there were definitely people that I wanted to connect with that I didn't. Whereas this group was so tiny.
Yeah.
I was able to connect with everybody repeatedly. And I asked Abby to be like our official event photographer. So we didn't just have a couple of like out of focus selfies of the event. We actually have like a series of pictures, which Abby also has written lovely descriptions for. So that way everyone can appreciate them. So that was a choice I was very proud of myself for. It was very fun to have those.
We raised $1,000 this year for the Books to Prisoners charity, Michael Kramer and Kate Redding's charity. So that is an amazing number, especially because of the number of people who were there.
Given how few people showed up, I'm very proud of us. We showed up for that.
We definitely showed up for that. Yeah. So thank you to everyone who bought something. And hopefully you either have gotten it at this point that you're hearing this, or will get it shortly, whatever it happens to be.
It's definitely in transit to you by the time that you hear this.
Yes.
If not already in your hands, depending on circumstance. Something else I wanted to mention about that. Oh, right. So the Michael and Kate thing was wonderful and lovely and not recorded.
No, it was not recorded. Yes, this is one of those moments we usually record everything, but I was distracted in setting everything up, and I just, made sure that everything was going in the room. They could hear us, we could hear them, and then we said go, and I didn't hit the record button. So it got streamed out live. If you're a patron, you could have watched it live. And if you were there, obviously you got to see it, but we did not record it. So that interview is sadly lost to history, which is unfortunate because it was good. It was really good.
It was really good. It was a fun time. We had them read all of the bad guy POVs from the cleansing of the cleansing of the taint sequence. We took out all of the POVs for that section, and then we separated them into the bad guys and the good guys, and then we took a vote for which perspective we wanted, and the unanimous
it was unanimous,
consensus
wasn't it?
was the bad guys.
Not a single vote for
unanimous.
the good guys, yeah.
It was amazing. Michael and Kate were like, well, which one do you want us to do? Because we were like, hey, which one do you want to do? They're like, no, we're on vacation. You make the choice. And the group was with one voice. We want the bad guys.
And, actually reading it from that perspective, I got almost a better concept of what was going on from outside than necessarily dealing with what's going on in Rand's head. It was interesting to actually take out the good guys quote on part and really revel in this is what it would have felt like to attack a defended position where some crazy magic's getting done. Yeah,
right, for sure. And in case anyone was wondering, I did leave Varen in both scripts because obviously
right.
leave Varen out of
either the good guys or the bad guys.
Yeah, and then we just had a great Q&A with them with the usual range of questions, but also a bunch of new questions, and we got the usual range of answers with a bunch of new answers. Mm-hmm. It was just delightful to spend time with them as per usual. I was definitely feeling pretty over socialized by my entire September by the time we got to SpoilerCon, but it was still really, really fun
mm-hmm.
to hang out with them, to hang out with everyone there, to go eat all that delicious food cart food. I mean, the food carts. Guys, go to Portland just to eat the food cart food. It's so good.
Yeah, I think it was a good decision to do it the way we did it this year. I think it was just as much fun for everybody and a lot less stressful for some of us.
Yeah. So those are lessons we will be taking forward. And
I guess we should throw out a thank you to everyone who worked on SpoilerCon. There was a ton of people out there who made that happen.
Not me, for example. Other people made that happen. I just take the credit. So I'm giving that credit back. Bambi who couldn't even come from halfway around the world, absolutely held down the silent auction, which is how we raise our money to buy Michael and Kate's attendance. So really, Bambi's the MVP. Honestly.
Well, and Amanda for interfacing with Michael and Kate and making sure that was all set up and good to go. And Neil.
Oh, and Neil for keeping her cats of the freaking hotel herded in a semi-orderly direction.
And also Neil and Amanda for picking up the snacks for con food. A huge shout out to my girlfriend Never for doing all the legwork during the thing. She was running around doing so much. She bought us all liquor.
Too much liquor! Cut me off sooner!
Hey, she's not a bartender. She's just pouring you drinks that you asked for.
She's an amateur, not a
pro. And for dressing up as Elaine, I think she had a great Elaine costume, as always. She got a new dress for that.
Oh, and speaking of dresses, Desmond's Moghedian.
Oh, absolutely.
Very top notch. Very Moghedian.
Very well done.
D&D Game Master and Moghedian knockout of the Parker. Mwah.
Well done.
Yeah, that was fun. I actually got to show off my vest that I had partially finished at WotCon. Yep. I actually had it finished for SpoilerCon. Mm-hmm. So that was fun to get to wear around.
I got to be the stationary Gleeman, right? So I turned my cloak inside out, and I grew a little bit of a gut for, part innkeeper, part Gleeman. I get to tell stories in one spot and not go anywhere.
Yeah, you went with retired Gleeman.
Retired Gleeman.
That was the idea.
Yeah,
retires to keep it in.
So, yeah, no, I mean, we could talk about SpoilerCon all day, so I think we should probably move on.
I mean, yeah, literally, we could just sit here and reminisce about the whole thing for,
Right.
like, I don't know, 2.5 days or so.
Yeah.
Because that's how long it took to have all those excellent experiences.
Yeah, all the meals, all the brunches afterwards. Sid did a great job suggesting a restaurant afterwards.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
Support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?